Hello and welcome back to the Voiro podcast. We are at season 6 and episode 7, and I am delighted to welcome Vivek Shenoy to the podcast. No, we are not related, but we go way back when I used to be working at YouTube and Vivek used to be working at Sybage. Welcome to the podcast, Vivek. I wanted to sort of first break the ice a little bit, right? And ask you, what have you been watching of late?
I would say the Euros, but I feel England is again going to disappoint us all. I did start watching House of Dragon because pop culture, need to stay ahead of it.
Correct.
And I just finished Blood of Zeus.
Okay. I can see a theme here.
Yes, blood and gore. But my guilty pleasure is watching Monk, a rerun of Monk as I work because it's just Tony Shalhoub's Monk.
And it's calming.
Absolutely. His compulsiveness is calming. So it's been pretty good so far.
Nice. I watched Inside Out 2. Did you watch Inside Out 1?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
And I didn't know that they didn't bring back certain voices onto the new Inside Out 2. So there was Mindy Kaling and Bill Hader along with Amy Poehler. And I think they got into this thing about how they couldn't afford all three because, of course, budgets are slim nowadays. And so they only got back Amy Poehler, and Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling dropped out. But nobody noticed. I didn't notice in the movie either. I only noticed after they started putting out the rushes when, they have been behind the scenes, and I'm like, hey, where are the other guys? And the only recognizable one was Phyllis, who's sadness, and
Anger.
Anger? I don't know who's Anger. Anger was somebody else. But Amy Poehler, right, was like is joy, right? So she's basically who she is. Anyway, all right. So getting down to what we're going to talk about today. First is that, before this podcast, as I usually do with most guests, we sit down and have like this get to know you kind of conversation. We've been working together for some time now, over the last couple of months. But I wanted to know your story. And I sat down with Vivek, and good God, what a story, man. There are so many different facets to it. It's insane. But somehow you make it work, with your personal life and what's happening at home, and your journey as a consultant, and in this entire ad tech martech space, which is confusing in and of itself, but being like in the center of it all is extremely interesting. So how did you come about being this consultant, and give us a little bit of a background of what you did in the last decade? As fast as you can.
Sure. I think my origin story starts in business research. I used to work with a company called Value Notes. Had the pleasure of working with Dunkin' Brands, Baskin Robbins, your Infosys, JP Morgan, etc., helping them understand the lay of the land, competitive landscaping, understanding strategy, etc. My core domain was publishing. So I did work with your Tata McGraw-Hill, Elsevier, etc., especially focusing on how they source services from India. On the back of that, I moved to Sybage as a business analyst. My purview there expanded to media and entertainment. And as you know, around the time, Sybage was this outsourced product development company that had a string of marquee clients like DoubleClick. In fact, DoubleClick was built with Sybage before Google.
Such a favorite with us when I was back in Google. I mean, and it used to be a pleasure to work with you guys at that time.
Absolutely. And my running joke was we used to work with DoubleClick when it was single click. So it works well. So I had the good fortune of working with agencies. We worked on YouTube. We worked with a lot of your end clients and implementations. We did a lot
of channels.
Brand channels.
Oh my God, those brand channels.
I was trying to dig up if I had a screenshot of that. I don't anymore. I wish I had for posterity. But we also ended up working with very interesting ad tech companies like Turn. We did some amount of work with, I believe, Lottomy. We did Group M. A lot of work in data attribution, ad tech. In fact, one of our clients, Tapit, we built an exchange ground up. So there was a lot of interesting product development that we worked on. As that role progressed, I had the chance to move into doing my own consulting. I did it for an agency, a digital agency that required a pre-sales and solutions head. But the true change in direction happened probably in the last 8 years when I moved to what is now called Spiceworks Ziff Davis. I think that's when I went from being more from a strategy, research, solutioning space into a practitioner. I set up ad ops there. We did a lot of work in building up programmatic ground up. And I think that was the first phase where I became an accidental product manager. And as I moved on from that role, that's when I ended up in a serendipitous consulting role, where I realized that the juxtaposition of my ad tech, martech, SaaS, and data experience is what is helping a lot of companies build new capabilities, understand markets better, and of course, continuously evolve. So I think it's all a full circle moment for me. I started in advisory in some sense, and I'm getting back to that. And I really enjoy it.
Yeah. So we were having this conversation earlier, right? And this makes sense because when you're in this ad tech and martech space and you see people starting companies, selling off companies, going to the consulting space, but still staying in and around this industry, is because it's changing so fast. You can't really marry yourself to one single organization that's doing one single thing, right? Because things and contexts are changing, and we were akin it to, say, being a principal engineer, right? Having varied experiences to be able to help an organization overcome different things that either are coming back in a new form from the past, or it's something completely new, but you're using the same experiences to be able to solve it. So over the last decade or so, right, you started in advisory, back in consulting. I mean, you've continued to be in consulting, accidental product manager, and so on and so forth. But in the same industry, demand gen, ad tech, martech, do you see a commonality of themes of what problems people were trying to solve back then and now? Has there been a change? If so, what kind of change has that been? And has anything stayed the same over the last decade?
I think the recurring themes always are how do I make it easier to execute? How do I make it easier to scale? I think what I would add to the theme of the conversations I've had in the last couple of years maybe is how do I control my own destiny? And the reason I say this is because in the initial phases, we were building tech. A lot of businesses were trying to build a niche of their own, try to get a competitive edge using the tech that they build or the offerings that they release in the market. I think that now has already matured in the sense that they are optimizing for scale and growth, which means that whichever option, whichever avenue, whichever tech partner, programmatic partner gives you that monetization or capabilities, who you would go after. I think in the last 2 years, under the guise of privacy, a lot of big tech companies have really deepened and widened their moats. And if you truly want to be a competitive publisher, you truly want to be a competitive advertiser, you have to now start thinking about the future, which is where the themes are. So we've already heard of publishers wanting to try out universal IDs. We've already heard of publishers wanting to start increasing their sales outreach so that they can sell their first-party data better. We've also heard of publishers that have started building moats around themselves. So I think that is the change. I feel where we initially started with build, moved into buy and optimize. Where we are now we're in buy and optimize, we are now in how do I go back to the roots and protect what's mine. So I think that's where we are. And it's a very interesting narrative. The big tech companies with their moats are their moats. Businesses could choose to work with them. But I feel that there are also these large independent pools of businesses that have started forming together. So some of them, like the Trade Desk, LiveRamp, etc., probably more vocal than the others. But from a business perspective, I would say that is the key part. How do you really remove the dependency from big tech companies to a point that you know that your sales pipeline, your revenue, and your growth is in your own control? And that's where I see the industry moving. Might be a hot take, but if businesses aren't thinking about this, it's already too late.
Yeah. So, when you talk about they're trying to do universal IDs now, right? And we were all preparing for, as of today, right now, we were preparing for it to be a, cookieless world, right? And it's been pushed, and it's I don't know why it's being pushed. I don't know whether you have a take on that as to why is Google not just pulling the goddamn plug?
I think it's the consciousness of the world, which is Europe, which is pushing back on antitrust. And I feel that we are going to hit this multiple times like we have in the past. Chrome holds 80% of the market. If they remove cookies from Chrome, they become the world's biggest publisher. That's the way I see it. And we are also talking about other antitrust infringements that are starting to happen. Google's AI is taking away clicks to publishers. How are news publishers going to generate advertisements on the back of it? We also have something as stupid as Google saying you're not going to use credit cards for AdSense because they'll get 1.2% more in revenue
What is this? I have missed this news completely.
So let's say I'm a small advertiser,
yes,
or an agency. I use my credit card to run an AdSense program. I can then use that credit card as a certain liquidity enhancer before I get paid out from the advertiser.
Yes.
Now Google says that you have to either go invoices or you have to pay upfront. So small agencies are already complaining that this is going to hit my cash flow because I need to pay upfront.
Correct.
But from Google's perspective, they supposedly are saving on credit card charges being a merchant, which bumps up their revenue by 1.2%.
You mean to say their volumes are definitely that much, right? But then it is going to, I'm not going to be able to prepay a campaign, and we all survive on credit cards right now. And
that's where
so has this come into effect?
I mean, I've heard murmurs on it. I've heard on, AdTech gods where people have already started bitching about this, saying that this is just another step. But I think the more systemic problem for a publisher is how does your SEO work when AI is answering everything in the Google search page? How do you go beyond that search result page to actually get someone onto your site? And if you can't do that, your entire advertising stream is just gone. So like the French publishers, like the Belgian publishers, like the Canadian publishers, I think there is going to be an outcry which is going to push back such draconian changes, if you will. And let's not forget that Google did build their business entirely on publisher inventory up till now. Search is pretty much publisher inventory.
Exactly.
So the legality of whether it's fair use, whether it is something that publishers shouldn't monetize, is something that I won't comment upon. But I do know that this is probably the third or fourth time that antitrust proceedings have still not conclusively allowed Google to say that, okay, we're going to pull the plug. So I think the 2% cookie the cookie removal that they rolled out was a test to then prove it to the antitrust in September of this year. So we'll see where it goes. But it's going to be a blackout. I mean, all third-party cookies won't work, which means that attribution, reporting, everything that we relied on is going to break.
And it's not like the outside world, outside of Google, has any other larger player, right? It's so fragmented that it defeats the whole purpose of any kind of, like you're saying, any kind of straight line between clicks and attribution at all at this 100%. Point in time from a targeting perspective. Okay. So you made an interesting comment and a statement there where companies want to control their own destiny, right? And we've struggled with this as a SaaS provider, and also like existentially trying to figure out, are we SaaS, are we PaaS, are we a service provider? Because once you get into the media space, you realize that everybody's moat is down to the way they even service their advertisers' experience on the platform. So it's difficult to actually SaaSify, any kind of ad tech and media tech after a point, because either it moves out into a spreadsheet or you're manipulating or orchestrating the tech to be able to service the moat that your company is actually created for itself in the market. So in all of this confusion, right, that we've all kind of tumbled through in the last decade, this whole concept of build versus buy, right, and you go to a CTO and say that I've come with this technology, and then two years later they've built that same technology and saying, okay, we've built this, now you can leave, and they built it on the back of whatever they've learned from you as a SaaS provider, but they are not in market for that particular product. So it obviously atrophies after a point, or stagnates, or it becomes legacy tech, and so on and so forth. What is your take, right, from a product manager and a person who's been in this market for so long? Where do you think the balance should be, and how should a CTO be thinking about build versus buy, especially in the ad tech and martech space?
I think the best way to probably start answering that is to share an anecdote. When I was product leader with my previous role, me and my team had spent 5 years building a highly customized content management platform. In comes a new CEO, and he asked me, Vivek, why not WordPress? And that was 6 months later when we moved to WordPress. So we immediately started migrating everything to WordPress after that. All the rationale that we had built in terms of why we needed the customization didn't hold up to the fact that there was already a much more mature, highly development-oriented and supported platform, and extremely integratable platform already available off the shelf. I think all the retrospect of why that decision was made to go custom was mostly because engineers like to build. And as a product development guy, I also like to build.
Yes. I can vouch for the fact that engineers like to build, and we can build and build and build. Yes.
Yeah. And incidentally, one of those guys in my team was like, why are we wasting $20 a user a month on Jira? I will build a Jira for you.
Oh my God. I remember when we started this company, one of my partners at the time said he wanted to build the computer by himself because we didn't have money to get computers for each of us. And we said we need like good computers. He said, oh, we can go to the secondhand marketplace and we can put together a computer. I was like, no, we're not doing that. Let's just pony up the cash.
Yeah. And I think I like to segment companies in two parts. One is they're technology enabled or they're technology builders. And I feel technology builders are 1% of the world. Your NVIDIAs, your Intels.
This is like core tech.
Core tech. It could be, your Acquia or those kind of companies that build the software that you build on, like a Snowflake, Amazon Web Services, etc. Everyone else is a consumer. And I feel that in this space where when we build a custom CMS, our value to the market, to other clients of ours, was not the tech. It was what we were driving through the tech. And it doesn't make any sense to build if it doesn't add inherent value to what you're delivering to clients. So good example in the ad tech space, and this is again speaking from my previous role, when I inherited a large ad tech business after a merger that our company had, we had everything that had been built up, right from a bidder. We had a DSP that was built up. We had a cookie syndication platform that was built up, and no one knew how it worked. Tribal knowledge didn't exist. So a large percentage of what we were doing was just to do the cost-benefit analysis of saying, why can't this be done with, a DSP like Beeswax or MediaMath, God rest its soul.
Sad.
But yeah,
also the whole recent shutdown of all the Oracle acquisitions, they were all good companies at that time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I mean. That I think the inherent question is this giving us a massive bump up in value? I feel the true value of building something is more along the integration line. And any ad tech ecosystem is integration. It doesn't make sense to build the next AdX. It doesn't make sense to build the next universal ID because there are companies in the space already doing it. So that's my hot take. I think if you are not finding something in the market, that is a very different question to answer. If you find that there is a certain way you want to re-engineer your value, that is a different question to ask. But for most purposes, buy is always going to be the cheaper and the better option.
Sure. And then you build within the buy space to make it something that is of your own, right? Like you're saying, 100%. The whole integration platform in itself could be something that you own and operate in how it interacts with your business set, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen organizations, I don't know, do you remember Sugar CRM?
Yeah. I use Sugar a lot.
Yeah. So, that used to be a thing where everybody's like, we'll just use Sugar CRM and we'll like build it out to ourselves. And I remember when Jira had two versions of itself, right? You could actually use their APIs and build your own Jira version. And then you had what we currently are using, the Atlassian Jira Confluence Cloud space, right? So the school of thought there was you can DIY or you could pick up something that I've already thought of for you. But today, like you're saying, everybody has their own idea of what tech is, because we have tech that we interact with on a daily basis for our regular lives. So we believe that, and I think it's kind of true that we are all technologists, right? Like, if I can do this on my app that can deliver groceries to me, why can't I do this on my B2B software where I'm booking my order, right? It's the same, in a consumer's mind, it should be the same seamless kind of experience, can't be clunky. Because, earlier on, in the previous decade of when one was working, your B2B software was sad, right? It just was so sad. And you're like, okay, fine, this is the way that I'm going to like log my orders in and this is work. It looked serious, important and boring. And then B2C software was fun and exciting and quirky and also very like jarring because you had things taking over the screens and whatever else. But now both those worlds are merging because you're like, I'm working off my phone. I'm ordering groceries at the same time as I'm booking my sales order and I'm checking my campaign. And so I want the seamlessness of expectation of UX and the smoothness of interaction. I don't want it to be clunky. I want it to be, intuitive. So because there are so many voices at the table now, it is also becoming difficult, I guess, for companies internally to decipher whether they should do it themselves, or they should get somebody else to do it for them because they want to control their own destiny, right? And that when you're pushed to a corner after a point, you're like, you come out boxing. You're like, I'm going to do whatever I want to. And we've seen so many companies in the past, especially content companies. Like you're saying, there are consumers and enablers, right? content companies building their own tech. Like I've been pulling my hair out from its roots, because I'm like, why are they building this? Nobody else is going to come and buy it for them. And very recently, somebody told me that, look, the only thing that we want to know is where's our content going and who's watching it.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to control that. I want to be able to understand that without begging other people or my distributors to tell me, please tell me who watched my content, or how many households watched it, etc. So it's either comes down to a black box. You get what you get, you don't get what you get, or you depend upon regulatory bodies like a BARC or a Nielsen or somebody else who's tracking it at a sample set, and you're like, okay, fine, I can figure who's watching this content, right? Okay, so CTV. I want to talk a little bit of CTV, right? I was listening to something today on CTV, and I was talking to somebody about CTV yesterday, and in America, which is, of course, the god of the CTV, revolution, evolution, so as it were, because Amazon Prime decided to introduce ads on Amazon Prime, it has kind of skewed the adoption to sort of raise it up a little more. They thought they had time till say 2028, but I think it's kind of come up in terms of how CTV and traditional linear TV are kind of taking up the market share of ad dollars, right? That's what's happening in America, right? And as you know, a lot of things kind of trickle down all over the world. And this is also fairly hardware driven from a consumer perspective. And if you look at India right now, there is this narrative about CTV that is hotting up. Samsung is leading the charge on it, and they're trying to sort of gain market share around Southeast Asia. What do you think is the future of CTV in India? Do you think it's a thing? Is not a thing? Do you think that the government has to get involved with it to make sure that people understand who's watching where? And traditional television is based off of ratings that you get from BARC and other monitoring agencies, and then you create your plans. Here, I'm giving my distributors are few and far in between. I have cable, I have my set-top box. Now I have cable, set-top box, television, smart TV, as well as TV over IP, and I have my app on the television screen. But if I have a screen first strategy where the TV is the largest screen in the house, which means it should command the greatest amount of the rates and biggest ROI because it's at a household level. What do you think is happening what do you think will happen in India, right? Because television is still a thing. Linear television is still a thing in India. People are still watching cable. Are they still watching television? What do you think?
I think most of India is on cable. I feel most of India still is a one TV household. And people in those households who watch OTT are doing it on phone. First opinion, right?
So it's a screen. It's a screen strategy.
It's
right?
a screen, yeah. I think the middle ground is probably going to be in the space of the Fire TV or Chromecast, which seems to have penetrated more. So I have a TV. I run Fire Stick. Incidentally, as a consumer, I would never buy a Samsung.
Why? I love my Samsung TV.
I would hate any brand running an ad with Samsung, because for a 1.5 lakh TV, I don't want to see ads. It's like I was subscriber to Sony Live and would call them out.
It looks pretty on top.
But I don't want it. I don't want ad-sponsored premium flagship TVs, yeah. Even the S24, I'm sure they're going to send ads. They already sent it on my S22.
Correct.
A Sony Live, and I'm going to call them out on this. I was watching the Euro highlights. I'm a paying customer, and they still show me ads.
Yeah, that's true.
So then what is the point? Why should I pay them for it? Yeah. But then I know that they'll be even more toxic in the number of ads they show me.
Correct.
But I feel there are two different hats that I wear now. And this is the beauty of being a consultant. I can say whatever I want and say this is my hot take.
Yeah, exactly. There is no media training here. It's all your personal opinion.
Yeah, but jokes aside, I think there's one part of me that says this is very exciting. I give you an example. I've been speaking to this startup, been incubated for almost 8 years. They've just been working on the tech. They run an AI, image-based AI, that first looks at a stream, breaks it down into images. Each image, they're able to tell you what are the products in it. They look at your catalog and say, here's a product. Now, when you look at MasterChef Australia, which is what they use in their marquee advertisements, you pick up a KitchenAid kettle, it's showing this is a KitchenAid, you click, it goes to the e-com side. And this is all through CTV.
Nice.
They also allow this kind of experience to happen through OTT, and they connect it back to your phone. So those are incredibly amazing viewpoints. I would love to do it with an ad geo. You get a Wikipedia article out of it, so on and so forth.
And book my trip there.
Yeah, that's where you push it, right? That's where you're thinking about, okay, you know what, breaking that big barrier between the user sitting on a couch with your mobile and what's happening on the screen. I don't know if you read this, but Netflix has a guideline now for all story like screenwriters that say you're competing with the mobile. You're competing with the user.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yes. And that's why you have, a John Cena come back and say, this is what is happening with the story so far. It's exposition.
Correct.
So I feel there is a lot that is going to happen on the back of it. I feel that there are already these immersive experiences that a Black Mirror has done with some parts of their content, etc. And I feel that there is scope for it. But as a consumer, I absolutely hate the path where you stuff everyone's, mind space and TV space with ads. And I feel that, as a consumer, premium brands, I'm ready to pay a premium, but I don't want it to be ad supported.
Yeah, and also, this also calls for ads in itself to be a little more intelligent, right?
100%.
Right? I don't mind. There's so many seasons of House of Cards that you had like Microsoft sponsored products there, right? And it was an implicit placement, but it was a placement, but you knew it was a placement. Like it wasn't like it was a deliberate placement right there. But there are ways in which you could actually make this a far better experience for a consumer as well, from an advertisement perspective. I put on the radio today on the way to work while I was driving. Usually I have my Spotify connected to my car. But this time I decided to listen to the radio. I had 2 songs in my 20-minute drive, and the rest of it was just ads. And it was roadblock ads, yeah. And I was driving at peak hour from 9 to 9:30, right? But it's just ads. And I know so much about the Bangalore real estate space right now, and I'm not even in the market for it. It's ridiculous. But like you say, you get it. Businesses have to survive, right? Content is expensive to create. Broadcasters have declared that they're not going to create any more content. Like, for example, the other day, Puneet Goenka, Z said, I'm not going to create any more content till I find stability.
Yep.
Right? And I'm like, okay, how does that work? Netflix is getting into the concept of windowing their content as well. Bridgerton came out in 2 parts. I don't know whether you watched Bridgerton or not, but
I heard about a lot of it.
Oh my God, right? This season was a little like, it was a bit of a, it was, I don't know. I didn't expect it to be this risky this season. And the thing is, I'm watching it on my big screen in my beautiful hall in my house where I have my children and my house help like passing by, and I'm like, this is not something that I can watch in the middle of the house, right? So, but yeah, so it was, but this time around they didn't release everything at one go, right? They released a couple of episodes and then they waited for 2 months and they released the next. So they have the concept of windowing, so they're able to stretch it across.
We are back to linear with extra steps. Correct. That's what we are.
Correct. Which makes me think that the linear guys are saying, we'll get back to the old days.
Yes.
We will get back to the old days, right? But by that time, and I'm thinking that the guys who are there right now, they shouldn't fade away by the time the old days come back, because then the old days will be new days for the new guys who didn't know better, right? So one of the biggest asks I think most content creators, broadcasters have with this whole CTV revolution is that they need to know who's watching where, right? And what. Because, they choose their target audiences up front. They create content for certain kinds of target audiences, but they need some validation. But if I'm placing my content on Samsung, on Vizio, on like whatever other channel, on Binge, or, wherever Tata Sky is, and there's no return path to me at all, right? And if it's a return path from several different points, it goes back to your point of integration, right? And about being able to control your own destiny, plus being able to figure out how do you manage this on your own, right? Where do you have certain upfront buys that you can actually say that, okay, I have this as a predictable amount of revenue, and then you have stuff that comes in as ebbs and flows. Yesterday, one of my salespeople came up and said, with these subscription rates crashing the way they are, I feel the ad business will contract, or the number of people who are actually the ad, because the inventory will contract, because the number of people you can show ads to will contract as well. But what you're saying on Sony Live, are you watching Sony? You're on Sony Live, I'm assuming, which you said, showing you ads is because if they stop showing you ads, who will the advertiser show ads to at the end of the day? Because you're a small percent of the population who's actually watching Euro.
But this is where my fundamental flaw is. The fundamental flaw of the model is that if you do not value your content to be able to charge a premium rate for it, there's something wrong with the model.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm paying whatever, like 1,000 rupees a month for Sony Live, charge me $2,000, but say it's ad free. And I feel that this is, a D move to be able to tell me that I bought a, 1.5 lakh TV to say that I'm going to run ads on it.
iBacco runs ads on my television.
Well, I tell you what, see, in all fairness, my criticism aside, at least I don't get Harpic ads when I was eating food, watching linear TV.
That's true.
I'm happy for that.
That is true.
And they show the world's ugliest commodes at the time. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, the ads that I'm seeing on my television are pleasant. They're like, they really think I'm an extremely rich household because I get like these beautiful supercars and, stuff to like luxury goods. And I'm like, yes, but I'm not in that market, but this is nice.
Kavita, they retarget you.
Yeah.
So it's a reflection of what you're browsing.
Maybe. Yes. Okay. So coming to the martech space, right? And B2B space. Now, we all are struggling today to find, intent, audiences who are wanting to buy products. Everybody has tech involved in their lives. Recently, one of my customers, they gave their sales head a different title so that he was able to talk to platforms so that, it would become a place where there was actual user feedback in how the OMS was deployed in their company because they were like daily users of it. So he said, I had to change my designation because otherwise, why would anybody talk to a head of sales, right? And so it's very interesting the way the buying space is changing and who is the actual buyer at the end of the day. And I know Santosh keeps yelling about who's our ICP for this, right? And, you go to various tools and you find that this particular person who is bank center and your ICP no longer works at this company. And it's a big game. This whole marketing game is a continuously changing point. So in the B2B space, right, for people who are in the B2B space, what should these companies be thinking of and investing in to prepare themselves for the next decade?
I think it's also good to start with just understanding whoever the prospective audience is, whatever the definitions are. The way businesses have been reaching out to these people has changed phenomenally. I think when I started in the demand gen industry in 2015, give or take, a lot of would-be decision makers, influencers were struggling for information, which is where you had this, a massive growth in things like G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, there was software advice, which Gartner bought, etc. Or, even consulting companies like Gartner, PwC, etc., stepping in to help them figure out where do they go from a tech purchase. I think it's devolved to a point that with the access to the data, the B2B data segment that really blossomed in the last decade, every sales rep has the same tools, be it a small startup all the way to a Microsoft. Now, the running joke is Microsoft has LinkedIn as their asset, but still runs, B2B campaigns outside LinkedIn, which may make sense from a consent and, privacy and regulation perspective, antitrust, however you look at it. But it's like ridiculous that LinkedIn is there, but you're still getting people to run campaigns using LinkedIn data. But
and also that they have Microsoft Dynamics, and
exactly.
you would presume that they will at least connect it and make it an available directory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel that now there is an overcrowding of people trying to reach out to the same set of people if you're in the tech industry. Now, some nuances change. Like let's say order management, you could say ad ops is the bigger stakeholder here. You could say sales is. My experience suggests that both those functions have their own shadow IT. You're just going to the IT head and saying, I want to make this purchase, make sure that it integrates, it ticks your SOX 2 compliance, etc. And we're good to go. Now, if you think about the average IT manager sitting out of the US, they probably get 1,000 emails a week. They are lucky because after COVID, a lot of them lost their desk phones and direct lines and stuff. So phones don't ring as often. And that's where the struggle gets more and more, that you're trying to build pipelines that are fundamentally inorganic to a point that it's not scalable. You're not nurturing them upstream. If you call someone, if I were to call as a sales rep to someone, do they know my brand? Have they ever come across my brand? Don't I need to introduce that first? So I feel there's a little bit, that's why I say that controlling your destiny is actually investing in way upstream content, engagement, touch points, etc., to then be able to give your sales rep the chance to get a foot in the door. And I think the foot in the door is now like, it's a crack in the door. It's a crack in the door. And I think referrals are the windows in the, windows to the customer. And that's why it really then starts becoming a marketing and PR function. And I feel that a lot of times, businesses are bound by the fact that you are in a growth phase, you need to do outbound. But it can't just be sending emails. It just can't be sending phone. The data is the leveler, but what you do with the data is the tactic. So I think that's where it's going. I feel everybody's spoiled for choice. You get intent data, you get access to publishers who say run campaigns with us, we'll target our audience, etc. But how you engage with them is again something that is very intrinsic. And I feel that as data gets tighter, as your Google's, Meta's, Microsoft's, etc., want more to do more, you would need to then have teams in-house that are building and nurturing your prospects for a sale. And I think that's the way to control the destiny. I think a lot of companies moved past that. And I've been reading, as a lead up to what we've been working on for Voiro as well, I've been reading up a lot of how media planners are also upset because they don't get service. They are sitting on budgets from massive FMCG companies, but you get some rep in Philippines saying that I don't know the answer. I will send an email, 72 hours later, I'll give you an answer. Even in my previous role, we are a $1 billion company. We still didn't have direct access to Google. So what does it take? And that's where the whole question is, that if you're running such a big business, you want to build a big business, you need to control how you go after customers. And I think you need to own that. That is something that you can't outsource. It's not, people can help you, businesses can help you, but it's something you need to intrinsically control.
Yeah. So audience is making sure that you're able to understand who you're going after. All of that tech is something that you'll have to make sure that you understand deeply as well.
100%. And you're absolutely right. I feel sometimes me going as a product person is a much better selling point. Yes. Because it's not selling a company and its service. It's actually buying you into a recommendation that I'm making.
Yeah, it's a thought process, an ideology and the ability to be creative about it. Because when you say you're a product person, at the end of the day, nobody is saying that this guy is going to come and give me a sales pitch and I don't want it, right? But like when you were talking to me earlier, because you were a product manager in such a large company, and the ability for you to be able to fight for your budget, sell it, and understand why you should be building certain things, also has given you a good level of business acumen and that sensibility as well. So when you talk to somebody, you understand what's working for them and what's not, which is, I feel like, in the future, maybe you could have something to talk to product managers about what it takes to be a good product manager.
Yeah. And I just want to say the other very good reason why product managers make good salespeople is they say no a lot.
Yes. And they're not worried about that, right?
They're not worried about it.
They know they've worked it all the way out to various edge cases and they're like, no, this can't happen like this, right?
So one running filter that we used to do when we did tech evaluations is we would throw this ludicrous question to a sales rep. And if they say, yes, we can do this, we knew that, we're like, this is not the guy for our conversation.
Exactly.
And I think that's where it all boils down back to what the sales principles are. Understand the problem, solve for the problem. Sometimes you can't solve the problem, you walk away from it. And I think that's where, it's a very different philosophy. And to be able to get into conversations, not sales pitches, is a very different viewpoint altogether. Yeah. Easier said than done?
Oh, much more easier said than done, because in a lot of companies, the desperation to control your destiny, right? And the guardrails of trying to keep the costs low, and you have like a CTO team buying, a business team using, an in-house engineering team commenting, right? It's very difficult for them to make the right decision. So I keep like, this has been theme for this whole year, right? I've been like, let's stand in our competence, because at the end of the day, we don't take the customer's viewpoint as the end all and be all. We can take a step ahead and try and educate them on the choices that they're making may not pan out to be as good for them as they thought it would be if they wanted to build in-house, or they want to strong arm another product to be able to deliver something that is not their core, right? Because you will end up at a wall at some point in time, because you're not in market, you're not thinking about this, you're not growing with it. But on that note, on growth and controlling your destiny, I'm so glad that we serendipitously sort of connected earlier this year. We've had a really good run in the last couple of months working with you and Pod. I wanted to ask you a little more about, if you could give us a little brief about what is Pod and what is the vision for the setup that you have running out of Pune.
Awesome. So Pod, Product on Demand, was conceptualized as how do we give businesses the ability to tap into product skill sets without requiring hires, and with being able to scale it up or down or change the kind of outcomes that you wanted to build out using a team like ours. And it started with a lot of advisory projects that I've done in the past, engagements that I've done in the past, where companies were like, we want someone like with your experience, but we don't have the budget. Or we probably have a very pinpoint need where we can't do a hire. Yeah. And I think the vision for us has always been that we love knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And this is the right way to monetize it. It's one way to think of it. In fact, with some of our team members also, we do a lot of deep dives, minutiae stuff, which doesn't really contribute to a particular engagement. But I think it's meant to be something that we really enjoy. I think it's now slowly evolving into a vision, Kavita, where we want this as probably taking a shape of a marketplace where people can come and access product talent, business analyst talent on demand.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of times companies build blind spots internally. Yeah. A lot of times businesses want to do new things but don't have bandwidth, and that's where we want to fill the gap. So that's probably where the vision is. Yeah. But I think it's mostly funding my quest for knowledge, my quest for just finding good reasons to go out to the market, have conversations, and reflect on them. That's probably where I will go.
What I like about Pod is that it's a great mix of passion and professionalism with competence in it, right? So trying to get a team together really quickly and understanding the process of what product management is all about, and thinking about especially the ad tech space, right, which is, it's very nuanced, it's constantly changing, has really helped like Voiro in leapfrogging over our own complacency. And you get stuck as an organization, and the larger the organization, the slower the wheels. And so to be able to give it that much needed like spark, ignite, different thought process, even getting your own product managers to think differently, giving them a little bit of competition from the outside always helps, right? So this was new when I came across it. I wish you all the best. I think this is something that is going to like really like help the entire industry. And more power to you and to your tribe.
Awesome. Thank you, Kavita.
That brings us to the end of today's podcast. I want to thank you, Vivek, for joining us today. Thank you, Leena, Santosh, and Gautam for all the help as always.
Awesome. Thank you, Kavita. Thank you, team. Yeah.
See you all next time I record. Bye.